Yo, 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 what is going on, RoK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and we are back again for another Dope Sauce Rising Kingdoms video. Today, we are going to be touching on one of the most important things when it comes to jumper projects, new accounts, and I'm going to be touching on one, giving you experience and a direct account of what happened with my project Perfect Strangers, where we landed on Final Kingdom 2777. I'm going to talk about the prep, the build-up, the pitfalls, why I have left and have exited, give you some explanation and reasoning there. We'll summarize, and then at the end of the video, I may drop a little special hint. Okay, with all of that, if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find that in the pinned comment / description below. Okay, so with where we're at right now, the kingdom, in short, let me preface this as well by just reading you some information. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this up. I'm going to show you our recruiting ad real quick. And in this recruiting ad, it gives you some information on the project, what we're looking to do, what we're looking to build. And you can see here that it says, 6 plus or minus balanced alliances in Zone 3, distributing rally leaders, fixed and FFAMGs to rotate, running feedback rounds in the kingdom. Our hierarchy structure, which I think is very important. Leadership, council, officer, departments, members. Leadership reserves the right to make final calls when necessary and has oversight to make sure the kingdom and group is following through on direction and integrity. Now, for those who may be wondering, right, when I go through my processes for bringing people on board, whether it's leaders or officers, specifically for leads, right? First and foremost, everyone has to fill out an application when you're coming on as management. And for those of us that have done projects for a while, or if you've been in a project, you know that for the most part, management and specifically leads really define a direction, right? They reinforce the direction that a project is going in. With how, right, in order to make sure you're staying on track. Why? Because leaders essentially have the most pull, right, the most say. As long as, people don't hate a lead, right, you're usually going to be okay with going in the direction, whatever that may be, that they do. And then it's just a matter of hoping that all the leads are going to be in line with the project goals and follow through on those. In short, from one of the lines I read there where we focus on balancing alliances and doing proactive balancing from day one, if you take a look at the leaderboards here for 2777, given we're 24 days and 12 hours in right now, that's not happening. And you can see here, at least from the 6 alliances that are left from PS Fresh, right, the gap right now is, 225 mil. Previously, it was almost 300. It was, about 280, 290 mil at one point. And so basically what this shows is when I go through and I work with my leads from applications, one of the next steps we do is I do a voice interview with them, right? It's mandatory for all leads. And in the interview, I'll re-go through our kingdom goals. I'll go through specific scenarios and examples on how those play out. I'll reinforce or reiterate the hierarchy structure just so they have a good understanding on how it works. So that way, at that point, it's really if they agree to it or not. And thankfully, at least at the time, all of the leaders that you see here, right, with Spidey, Draco, Queen, Crazy, Fresh, and Wraithen, right, this was explained to each one of them, including Ghost at the time as the 7th. And everyone agreed to this. This was made clear to everyone on how the structure was going to work, on how the hierarchy was going to work, on how we were going to manage events. And for things like power balancing and the hierarchy, right, there was more details that were provided there just so it's crystal clear, because it's really important that if you want to get people on the same page and you want them to buy into something, they have to have the details. They have to have the information so they can make a well-informed decision for themselves on if they're choosing to stay or choosing to leave. At this time, everyone chose to go forward and stay on board. Therefore, them agreeing not only that they would uphold these things for the group, but agreeing and promising to me as well. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way, as you can see here from the leaderboards. Unfortunately, what we see happening is there's still being a power imbalance. It's still growing, and it's not getting close, right? Now, remember, the important part here is that each project, each jumper project, defines themselves with how they want to build and how they want to manage a kingdom. Some projects will have more information than others. Some will have less information than others. Some projects might say, hey, we're just going to go in and fight. We want to run everything, and we're going to go and attack anyone and everyone who gets in our way. Some people may want to join that. Some people may not want to join that. Just as much as some people may want to join my project, and some people may not want to join my project. And that goes for anything. Life is a choice, or like a box of chocolates, as my buddy Mr. Gump would say. But because everything is a choice, it is important to know what you are signing up for, right? Which means doing things like reading an ad, asking questions, making sure you are well informed enough so you can have realistic expectations when you go into something. Unfortunately, even though there was a plethora of resources that I provided, others had assisted and helped in writing up as well, for officers and leads on how to go about explaining information to players to help with doing things like power balancing and redirecting. In short, our goals was we put a hard cap on the 6 alliances where we'd say, you guys can accept anyone 200 and 250K or less, right, starting out. And, that bumped up as we got stronger and stronger in the kingdom. And then anyone that's above the cap, or basically just high-powered players, would be sent to, and this is high-powered players and any potential mergers, right, would be sent to whoever was the current number 7 alliance, with the expectation and hope that number 7 would catch up with number 6, and then 7 and 6 are here, and then they're going up and catching up to number 5, so on and so forth until you eventually catch up to 1. And that's one of the most efficient ways to power balance. I've done this already myself in another kingdom builder that 1 was much harder to recruit in that game, and 2 was much harder to power balance because you had 3 factions. And you could only join an alliance if it was in one faction. In RoK, you don't have to worry about that because you can join any alliance you want from day one, whether it's number 100 or number 1, right? Obviously pending an acceptance. But when I look at the boards here, this is the challenge for me, is that what ended up happening is there being leaders and up to how many officers, this specifically is not all officers, but it is some, where, and let me put a very appropriate asterisk here, this was exacerbated by the top 2 alliances, meaning that the most amount of acceptances that came in for players over the cap that was agreed upon was that, or I should just say was stated, / provided, was that number 1 and number 2, in this case being Classy and Perfectly, were constantly accepting people over the cap. And because of that, it created a snowball effect that bled into alliances like Faceless, Breed, Society, and United, where they saw this happening and thought to themselves, well, why am I going to follow along with this process that Boss put out, that I agreed to, that I joined the project for to do, if these other alliances aren't doing it? And so it really made it unfair for them, because they were then put into a situation where, okay, do we keep following the rules even though the others aren't, or do we not and just try and stay a little bit relevant? And I think the challenge is that the top 2 alliances, because I've had conversations with Draco and Spidey, and unfortunately, they just don't see how this was impactful. The average response I get is that, players should be able to play the game they want, they should be able to do what they want, and we shouldn't be restricting where people can go. However, in the same breath, they signed up to do it this way. So I think it's important that, 1, we don't contradict ourselves or sound like hypocrites, and that we follow through on what we promise people that we're going to do. And we do everything in our power, meaning exhausting every possible option to do that, when we were the ones that chose to be a part of something. When we are playing online as gamers, as players, all we have is our integrity. All we have is our word to one another that we will do what we say we are going to do. And if you don't, then those people have lost their integrity, they're liars, and usually we just don't associate with those types of people, because we know that their words do not match their actions. And I think that can probably be, more or less looked at in IRL as well, right, depending on each person. And I'm sure there's some subjective situations. But in short, if we're just kind of going on a baseline of averages and common denominators, right, this is usually how we would operate. And so for me, because this was one of the things outside of also members of, and again, members, not everyone, but members of management, were not taking the time to properly inform and properly educate players that were either migrating or applying above the cap to thoroughly, if not at least at minimum, explain why we are doing power balancing, why we are doing certain things. That makes it really difficult when we are trying to build something that everyone who joined the project to do is expecting. And when those things don't happen, that is when you start having rifts that will be created. And that's why it's important. I think people have to really read. You know, it's like they tell you, read the fine print before you sign. Like literally, people need to read and be well informed when you're joining something. There's no point in joining something and then all of a sudden later you're like, oh, I don't like that. That's not the leader's fault. That's not management's fault. That's not the fault of the people who started the project. That's the player's fault for not reading. It's your responsibility to be informed, just as much as it would be mine before I sign a contract or before I join something. Why would I want to join something if I don't believe in it? Why would anyone in that matter join something that they don't believe in? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's a conundrum. And because of that, because of a few other things, that was the main reasons behind why myself, Ghost, and a few others, however many that may be, have decided to leave and step away. At this point, if I stayed on, my integrity would be compromised, and I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I definitely don't want anyone to call me a liar for not following through on what I promised people that I would do and what I have a responsibility for the players here to do that as well, which is why when I did step down, options were provided to players on what they can do, right? What can you do going forward? And so those were provided to them via an announcement that we made, so that way they don't feel like they're stuck. Most players, on average, usually aren't going to necessarily read all the announcements. So sometimes you're going to have a group of people that are kind of the last to know on when things are happening if they're not already proactively staying informed. And usually for the average new player, to them, it's not really going to matter too much in the long run because they're brand new, right? So for them, it's, unless they feel some level of strong bond to what was formed, that's different, of course. But if not, they'll just kind of go with the flow. This is more talking about the informed people that are proactive and stay informed and up to date on Discord. They read mails all the time. Those are really, for the majority part, your big active bunch. And so, but again, overall, everyone is every player in the project, just like every player that's still in the kingdom playing. I feel bad for, because even though we can never guarantee the actions that any individuals will take, what we can do is try to reduce that margin of error by providing as much information, as many resources as possible, so the people that are joining, whether it be a player, someone who's applying for a higher position, can have realistic expectations on what those positions entail and how the project is going to be managed. Those of which, among more, we did effortlessly and thoroughly, I might add. So for me, I can say, well, my conscience is clear. I think we did a great job on those areas. But the one thing we just can never expect is the actions that individuals will take. And in this case, the actions that were taken were really not any actions at all. Or on the flip side, the actions that were taken was to accept people over the cap and not focus on balancing or not care to do any balancing for, again, the said individuals or the specific ones that did those. So in summary, when I look back on everything, I think to myself, we were crystal clear on everything that we said. And for whatever reason, weirdly enough, there was just a good amount of people that just didn't care to follow through. As I mentioned, if I did mention this before, I've never seen that happen. Out of these 8 projects that I've done, including this one, never seen that happen. This is the first one where there was just absolutely no follow through on the majority end, where you saw that reflected the majority of the time on the leaderboards. It's just wild. And what's even wilder is that 3 of the leads I know personally. Like, I've known for a while. However, only one of them, really, for the most part, believed in following through to the absolute end and wanted to do everything they could, as much as myself, to get back to that, right? To make sure that we're not veering off what we agreed to. And that, to me, is, unfortunately, a little disheartening. Because, like I said, it's the same. For me, it's really the same thing, right? Is that, the important part is that, I think it's challenging is that there's a lot of hope that there's a lot of hope that every player has when they join a project, that everyone is here for the right reasons. Everyone's on board. Everyone believes in what we're doing. And when you find out that that's just not the case, that's really disheartening, man. It's a letdown. Not only for me personally, but, for probably all the players who really believed in the project. And I will say this. I do take this as an outlier because this has never happened before. I've just never seen it. And so this, to me, is more so the exception than I would say the rule. But it is unfortunate nonetheless, because the ones who are really the most impacted are the players. And to answer the question, because I'm sure some people may ask, well, boss, why not stay on board and try to fix and correct things? When the ship is sinking and you're unable to plug holes because nobody wants to get their hammer out to start plugging holes, that is when that is a ginormous red flag. And it's time to get out of Dodge. Because remember, there were options and suggestions that were provided. I actually provided a suggestion and an option to correct everything. However, that option was not voted for by the majority of the council members, which I was hoping that it would be if they truly believed in the project and the goals that they signed up for in the very beginning. But who would have known that they just, kind of wanted to turn the project into, whatever new direction they saw, or going back to what they're familiar with. Going back to what you're familiar with is comfortable. It's safe. It's reassuring. Trying new things is where the true challenge is, in my opinion. Right? Really pushing the boundaries to see what could be, and not just kind of falling back on what is comfortable. With all of that in mind, I'm kind of getting to the end now to round this out. With that being said, if anybody wants to, reach out and have a conversation or a discussion, they're more than welcome to. As I said, I think I mentioned this in the beginning, I definitely wish 2777 the best. I can only hope for their success, and I can only hope that the new management and the new governing body there is going to do the best job they can to hold themselves accountable and to be responsible for the players, because it's on them now. Everything that comes with that. And that's just something that's really important to recognize, is that every single council member, right, if anyone leaves, if anyone drops out, because remember, they all voted specifically in a certain way, and that should indicate that they're all on the same page. So if that doesn't hold true, then please feel free to save this video as a reference point, because the moment that you start seeing leaders drop out, or people swapping out or not following through on what they agreed to, then all that really shows is that, one, the grass wasn't greener on the other side, and the few went through changing core foundational pieces on a project for nothing. So again, I hope it doesn't come to that, and I hope it does work out, and I hope they are able to be, and more importantly, maintain being on the same page. However, this video will be, a good, if anything, constant reminder on kind of upholding what I feel are good professional beliefs for those that are still involved in the project. To finally end everything out, because I'm almost at 20 minutes here, for those that are wondering, yes, I will be doing another jumper project. Why? Because if I was to stop now on trying to do something innovative, to try and pioneer something new, I would really just be failing myself. More details will be provided on my Discord for those that are interested. Again, link will be in the description and pinned comment. That's it. I hope you enjoyed. Would love to hear any and all feedback. Of course, I would expect people to keep it civil. Again, anything that is over the line or derogatory will possibly either just be removed or reported. Again, if you can tell by my tone and the way that I'm speaking here, right? We're not here to belittle anyone. We're not here to use derogatory language, name call, put down. But what we are here to do is to state facts and to provide good supportive evidence and references so that way people are able to kind of know what happened, why it happened, and then why individuals, one being myself, decided to step away and hopefully being a nice kind of heat of caution. And if you're someone who's watching this video and you've had a similar situation happen in your kingdom or your jump project specifically, I would love to know. Please let me know in the comments down below. That is it for me. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later.